All right, everybody, welcome to the first review in our 2025 EMTB Shootout. We are very excited about this series, so stay tuned. We've got a lot more bikes coming, courtesy of Fox Racing, Schwalbe Tires, Velocirax, and Zion Mountain Ranch. Previous generation Timp Peak has done well. It was an easy bike to recommend, and I think something that we had a lot of fun on, but it did have some areas and some shortcomings, right? Like all bikes do. So before we get into the ride impressions too deeply, let's kind of fly over some high-level stuff on the new Timp Peak.
So kicking off, Ari has kept the same 170mm travel on both ends. It is now 29 or 27.5 inch rear wheel compatible with a 29-inch wheel up front at all times. And they really built in a bunch of adjustability into this bike. So you've got a seat stay pivot flip chip, which lets you go from a high and low geometry position, and then a chainstay flip chip, which gives you a low and long or a short and high chainstay and bottom bracket position in combination. And really it means that with either wheel size you can really tailor the geometry to give you the handling preferences that you want. They also made a lot of changes to the suspension, so the overall layout has changed and a lot of the characteristics have done too. This is a much more supple bike off the top, and just generally has made this bike a lot more friendly for this man here.
Well, you know, we don't want to get into that too deep, right? Because I loved how playful and sprightly the last bike was. It was a bike that was, it rode incredibly light for how much it weighed. And I guess it was actually a fairly light bike, but it was one of the easiest bikes to jump, manual, play with. But yeah, when you really want to plow it down some of the longer extended descents, there would be a little bit of that spike in energy that I do sometimes talk about.
Outside of that, it's now got the Bosch Gen 5 drive unit instead of the Shimano EP801 that the previous generation has, which is a move that we're quite happy to see. This Gen 5 drive unit kicks ass, and now it's even more powerful than it was, with up to 100 Newton meters of torque and 750 watts of peak power. Also, I should mention it's got a headset cup that will let you do even more adjustment with the head tube angle, and really this thing is just so adjustable and pretty damn awesome overall.
And speaking of adjustability, I think we should talk about quickly Ari's 23-point fit program, as well as the option to customize the build. You can't change colors like the Orbea Mayo program, but you can really do a lot in terms of your dimensions, part spec. They've got a pretty, I guess, engaged customer service department, so you can send them a DM or get involved there and modify stuff. And something that we'll talk about modifying is the wheel spec. Originally when we got the bike, it was priced at $82.95 for the spec with a mullet wheel and an 800 battery. I wanted to drop the weight, so we got the 600 watt-hour battery as well with the range extender. That was a $100 price deduction. You wanted to change it from mullet to 29, and we happened to have a set of Forge and Bond e-bike wheels sitting around that we were going to start testing. By the way, these wheels are awesome. So we put those on, which is a $1,000 upgrade from Ari. So all in all, this bike, as you see it, is just over $9,000 with a pretty dialed kit, I would say. So yeah, some good customization and abilities there.
Further to the adaptability and customization options on the bike, Bosch has the Flow app, which means you can go in and tune the characteristics of the motor system, change the different modes that you have, and really just set up the e-bike system to give you the power and the range and the overall handling feel that you like, which is really awesome. Cool. Moving on next, is there anything that stands out to you of the geometry of the Ari Timp Peak 2.0?
Yeah, the first thing that stood out to me when I swung the leg over it was the ability to go either that short or long chainstay position. In the short position, it's quite short and snappy. And the other thing that was noticeable to me compared to some other bikes is that bottom bracket height in the 27.5 wheel configuration. It is quite low, not overly low. I wasn't bashing too hard. We do have another bike that is also quite low that was being bashed quite a bit. And then the reach number, the 480 reach for me is just that sweet spot. It just sits right in the middle of being super comfortable both going up and going down. Getting the bike set up, anything that stood out to you? Hard, easy, neutral?
No, for the most part, setup was pretty solid. relatively easy, and yeah, I mean, out of the box, the thing being a consumer direct brand, right, you would hope that the user experience would be pretty simple and easy, and I definitely felt it was.
Absolutely. For me, I was the first person to hop on this thing and start riding it. I started with that short rear end, the mullet setup, and the high BB, and it wasn't giving me what I wanted out of the bike. It was definitely playful and fun, but we weren't riding it on trails where you really want a playful and fun bike to begin with. So that's why this has ended up morphing into the bike that you see here. Things are pretty much in the lowest and slackest and longest position that you can, just to give it that stability, with that 29-inch wheel in the back as well. And for me anyway, moving the setup in that direction has really made this thing come alive and just be a bike you can absolutely charge on.
Was making those changes relatively easy? Was there any quirks or anything around that?
I did break a tool trying to get one of the bolts undone for the linkage. It's not the first of those tools that I've broken. I don't know if it's me or the tool, but the bolts were certainly quite tight, and the flip chips are quite, the fit of them in the frame is really tight, which is a good thing until it's not, I guess. But otherwise, no, it's pretty intuitive to make this.
I would have to add the fact that we're here at a shootout. These bikes are seeing multiple shock pumps a day. Having the sag indicators on that Vivid Ultimate is really nice. I bug him how many times a day for a sag card, but it is really nice to have that for us and for other consumers out there trying to dial in their ride and being able to do that trail side without getting out a micrometer and measuring out their sag.
Absolutely, and this is a really easy accessible shock, which is really nice for us as well. Like, yeah, we've probably made 100 changes in this bike, and yeah, it's appreciated every time that you can actually get in there with your fingers and turn the dials. Bosch Gen 5, how does it work? Cole, take it away.
I love the overrun. The more time I'm spending on it and getting better in some of these technical climbing scenarios and timing that little half crank to click on that overrun and then unweight, hop up, get on the power, awesome. The other hand, that overrun can overrun you sometimes if you are not completely balanced on the bike, and timing those pedal strokes or having your front wheel pointed where it needs to be. That's something that is taking some getting used to, but the delivery outside of the overrun on the power on these Bosch systems is just really smooth and very intuitive.
Talking about that overrun, I think it's important to note that the Ari was one of the bikes that we were lucky enough to have one of the first updated new app softwares that let us take it up to 100 Newton meters and 750 watts of peak power. And within that, there was also the new eMTB Plus mode. And that eMTB Plus mode is essentially a refined version of the old race mode from the Gen 4 race motor, which gives you that extended boost, overrun, whatever you want to call it. And it can be quite aggressive, but I think with this system, it is that little bit more controlled. And of course, with that Flow app, you're able to adjust the amount of dynamic kind of assistance that it gives you, which means that you can dial it back a little bit and make it that little bit easier, so that kind of running away feeling that it can provide isn't quite as likely to happen. Drew, what's your impression on this new updated Gen 5 system?
It's taking me a little bit of time. I like technical climbing, and there's certainly, I'm finding myself using the mode selector more on the Gen 5. And that could just be because I'm learning and adapting and I've gotten so used to the pre-updated version. But essentially I'm just, bouncing back and forth a lot on, wanting the 85 Newton meters versus when I want the 100. The overrun can be very, very nice. When you get down onto the smoother bits, acceleration in and out of corners, stuff like that, little bits like this, that extra power is very noticeable. It took a little while. We did some tuning in the app to sort of tame it down. A lot of the climbing in Utah, where we're riding specifically is, cliff edge, very loose and dry, and there's moments where you're having to be kind of slow and soft pedaling. You're in a gear that, like, if you were pedaling, you would just spin out, but you need to be in that gear because you have to make them really hard moves. And so, like, finding a balance of, like, that surging, like, it's getting away from me, but also having the cadence to stomp on the pedals and get the power when you need it it's a learning curve. And I think no matter what you do when you get on, it's going to take a while to acclimate, and I'm getting there now, and I really like it, and I like the ability to go from the 100 to 85, whether that's to conserve battery on a big day or it's a certain type of move that I need to just drop power down. So I'm liking it, I'm enjoying it, and the modulation and delivery of power is really spot on, I think.
This was one of the bikes that I had the easiest time on, some of those really sharp corners where you'd get kind of halfway through, get on the power and lift the front wheel and set it back down. This one bike in particular, there was multiple times where I did that earlier and was like, oh, that was sweet, that felt great. And then I was on the power going up to the next section earlier.
Yeah, for sure. To touch on Drew mentioning I had it in the mullet setup to start with, on steeper bits of climb, I was just having so much of a struggle keeping weight on the front end when it was in that short position with the smaller rear wheel. Going to the 29er has removed almost all of that. It's not that the seat angle or anything is too slack, but certainly when you get up to kind of me and Cole's saddle heights, which are super high, probably like, you know, above 95% of the population saddle heights, with a non kind of actual seat tube angle that matches the effective, you do end up getting pushed slightly further off the back, which makes things a little bit more difficult. But yeah, in this setup with a longer rear end and 29-inch wheel, I didn't have any issues at all, and it's a solid climbing machine for sure.
It's so at home being comfortable when you're pushing, and there's a section of trail here where it's kind of a blind roller into some really chunky rock into very deep sand. By far the most comfortable bike to hit that big G out where you don't want to be unsettled into that sand, and I was able to keep a really strong posture, conversed with how fun it was to dive into corners. I prefer the 27.5 setup on these full power e-bikes, so my style of wanting to kind of row and flick into corners was a little bit affected, but in the short setting with the 29-inch wheel, it's a really nice balance of that feeling.
Definitely a bike you can just hop onto and feel comfortable from the get-go. It's not got any pointed characteristics, it's just smooth, supple, fairly well balanced, just generally confident and dialed and super quiet and really good fun.
I would say that it has a rearward weight bias.
Definitely, and that's exacerbated when you have it in the short position, yes, and even further so when you have it in the mullet. I love that if it's like bike park, playful stuff. That is so much fun, just getting it onto the back wheel, flicking it about all over the place. That's great, and to have that option is fantastic.
Nice.
But for general riding, for gnarlier enduro stuff, it just makes it way more difficult to control a bike, especially when you're pushing hard and trying to, you know, push your limits.
The stuff that I didn't like, or that like I wished was improved on the last Timp Peak, which was that little bit of harshness, that kind of spike hitting those square edge bumps, is gone, right? They fixed it. The downside is the bike got a little bit heavier and it got more planted, which makes it great at descending. All the things that they talked about, fast times, super comfortable, great traction, all that stuff. So that was also the thing I loved most about the last Timp Peak. Overall, right, if I had to pick one to have, I would pick this one over the last one. I do like it better. The fun factor on that one, like just the liveliness and the ease in which it could jump and manual and all that stuff was really cool, but I'm not that great at that stuff. I prefer going fast and trying to hammer stuff and work on my lines and get quicker and quicker. This bike suits me for that end. I liked going to the 600 watt-hour battery because it brought the weight down a little bit further from that 800, especially with the power more if we ever needed it on the big days. It is not a easily removable battery, but it was easy enough for us to do.
And what I will say, just to make sure that it is known, is that when it is in its most playful setup, if you were to just play about with the suspension, probably add quite a bit of compression damping in there, maybe run slightly less sag, you could get it pretty damn close to feeling like the old one, just less abusive from the overall frame stiffness, less rattly because the drive unit's quieter and the cables are managed better. So I would say this is just in every single aspect a better bike than the old one, and an absolutely killer machine at that. And let's talk about the value again that they're offering. They've updated it, they've made refinements here, they've added adaptability, but still in its stock configuration it was just over $8,000, which for ultimate level suspension, killer TRP brake spec, one-up carbon bars, you know, there's nothing you're going to need to change on this bike, even if you're a discerning rider like we are. and then have the option to go carbon wheels and really add on
very good price.
Yeah. For another $1,000. It's I think very impressive what Ari are doing. Of course, it's not a dealer supported brand, it's a direct to consumer brand, which is something you're going to have to factor into your considerations. I don't know what their warranty support is like. I've never had to warranty a bike with Ari myself. I think our comments would suggest it's pretty solid. I think they've got riders' backs. They offer lifetime warranty on the frames now.
And a 30-day.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So
and a 30-day, no questions asked, money back. You don't like the bike, you send it back, which
It's pretty cool.
That for me when I'm recommending it to someone, like, yeah, if you don't like it, like, send it back. Odds are they're gonna probably like it. So it'd be interesting to see the numbers on how many they get returned.
Well, folks, there you have it. The first review is done. Hopefully we keep refining and getting better as the week goes on. But that is the new Timp Peak 2.0, a very solid contender in the shootout this year. Stay tuned as we work our way through the rest of the bikes in the shootout. Thanks again to Fox Racing, Schwalbe Tires, Velocirax, and Zion Mountain Ranch for helping us make this series possible. Without this support, we couldn't come out here and spend a couple of weeks away. So thanks again for watching. Leave any questions you have down below and stay tuned for the rest of the series.